Hi, this is Madelyn Dunlap, Director of Business Development at the Rewild Group. I have a passion for helping business leaders grow exceptional businesses. And today we're talking about the importance of strong management teams. You're listening to the Just Get Hired podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Just Get Hired podcast. Great managers matter now more than ever. Well, with so many people quiet quitting, companies need to find a better solution for retaining their employees, and it could be as simple as looking at their management team and making sure that they are taken care of. Well, you've heard that saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. Well, I want to explore this topic just a little further with my next guest, Madelyn Dunlap. Before I introduce her though, hey everyone, my name is Jessica Fiesta George, and I'm your host of Just Get Hired. This podcast is for job seekers, business professionals, hiring managers, and anyone who wants to level up their opportunity. On this podcast, we have honest discussions about what's happening in the workplace today, and we talk about everything from personal branding, the latest in HR technology. I also give you tips and advice on what's trending in the job market, and I introduce you to top disruptors in the talent space. Well, I want you to meet one top disruptor, Madelyn Dunlap. Madelyn is an entrepreneur, business owner, and director of business development at the Rewild Group. The Rewild Group is on a mission to multiply the number of exceptional businesses by serving business leaders and business advisors globally. Madelyn is passionate about helping small businesses grow through the framework that the Rewild Group continues to share with thriving companies. Well, if you guys enjoy my podcast and enjoy my content, I hope you head over to my website, justgethired.com. Make sure that you're following me on social media. Check out my Instagram page, Just Get Hired, and look me up on LinkedIn by searching my full name, Jessica Fiesta George. Well, in this episode, we're going to talk about strong management teams and why they matter to an organization. So come on back and let's get started. Hey, Madelyn, thanks for joining the Just Get Hired podcast. How's it going today?
Good. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I hate to admit, but before we jumped on to record, I was trolling your LinkedIn page and I read your About Me section, and you talked about your journey after college, where you ended up finding a place where people walked a step towards the best versions of themselves, and you stumbled upon a great business with great leadership. And I say that was a pretty intriguing story. So I'm not going to steal the spotlight, but if you don't mind, maybe tell our audience about your career path and your journey to work at the Rewild Group.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say that there had to have been a little luck in my story. I happened to find a place that I was working at through college and worked my way through the ranks. So I don't know, there was a magic in picking that particular place, but um, as I went through school and really grew in my skills, I was given opportunities then to be in a management position. And it was an interesting time because I can actually remember thinking that after all these years of school and, a lot of investment in time and money, I wasn't necessarily sure how to help the business grow.
Mhm.
And an odd moment for me. Um, but I happened to be really lucky again that I was working for a great leader, and he was on a bit of his own journey. The business was 12 years old. It was a good business. It was, a lifestyle business is what I'd call it. But
Mhm.
he was trying to really break this plateau that he'd found himself stuck in. And I got to be part of the leadership team that walked through really intentionally growing the business, and not just the top line, not even just the bottom line financially, but really everything about the business. And in that 3 years, I not only did I learn a lot, but I
Mhm.
got to experience a lot in the growth of that business. And it was really what I would call an exceptional business. It was one where people enjoyed coming to work, where there was even on the busiest days, you left feeling almost energized.
Hmm.
Um, and a couple years into that journey, a private equity firm and one of our competitors came and acquired the business. And it was after that 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 CEO that I worked for said, we have to take the information, basically, the methodology, the system we used to help our business, to help our young leadership team grow, and we have to take it to more people. So he went out and acquired that intellectual property
Hmm.
and put that into the Rewild Group. So what we get to spend our time doing now is having seen the importance of work and the importance of the impact that that workplace had on everyone that was there, including myself. We get to help organizations do that across the globe.
That's amazing. It sounds like he's already kind of a visionary and kind of can see
Hmm.
what was ahead. It's great to hear stories when you find a company that you fall in love with and you grow your career. That's exciting for you. But
Yeah.
outside of the Rewild Group, though, you're a military spouse, and from what I understand, your husband is retiring. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we had plans of him being in the military for, his 20 years. He joined really young, and we've just had other opportunities. Well, he's had other opportunities come about, and so he's taking on early retirement from the military. So, kind of onto a new chapter for us here.
That's amazing. Well, being a military spouse, I feel is also a full-time job. And then you've got your work that you're doing at the Rewild Group, and you've got some other, side hustle things going on. And so I'm sure you've had your fill of deployments and you've moved around with the military. How have you had to adapt to those different situations, and how did being a military spouse shape your life?
Yeah, we had a bit, and I'm sure every military family's story is unique in ways. We've had a bit of a unique journey in that for most of, well, really all the time that my husband's been in the military, I lived here in Colorado, where we both grew up, and where we met. And so deployments looked a little different for us. For a while, he was stationed in California, and so we kind of lived separately and did a lot of traveling.
Mhm.
But yeah, two combat deployments when he was with the Marine Corps, and I could probably write a book about all the things that that taught me and how it shaped my life at such a young age. But um, I'm a very type A, plan everything personality, and one thing that you learn, whether it's in the military or just in life in general, is that you don't get to control all of the um, as much as you might like to. You can't really control everything, and so it was learning to be not necessarily that you don't plan, but that you take the circumstances you're given and you really make the best of it. And trying to let go of the things that you can't control, because there's a lot of those things in life, whether you're a military spouse in a deployment or otherwise.
Well, the topic of this, is called Strong Management Teams Matter. So it sounds though, you've had like a lot of things, good and bad things, right? You've had a lot of things you've had to overcome, but um, have you really worked for a bad boss? It sounds like you have always had a good boss, but have you ever worked for a terrible boss in the past?
I'm probably just have a more positive outlook in general. I've worked for some really amazing leaders. Um, I in my journey story, probably glossed over a few experiences between leaving working at class action administration and coming to the Rewild Group. I did have the opportunity to work in a few other organizations, and I can't say I've had a bad boss, but I've definitely worked with leaders
Mhm.
that I didn't feel were furthering my career. Um, and where I felt like growth was really up to me. And I wouldn't even classify that as a bad boss. I would just say it's a very different experience. And especially when you're early on in your career, I think it can be um, it can be a scary place to be in, where you don't feel like you're necessarily being grown and that growth is up to you. um, you're not being mentored, because in those early years in your career, I would still categorize myself as being in those early years in my career. You really want that growth. That is the time to gain the experience. That is the time to really latch onto mentors and learn from what they've experienced in their careers.
Well, you've been very fortunate, and I like that perspective. I unfortunately have worked for some terrible bosses in the past. I've had many
Oh,
jobs, but no, I appreciate that perspective. And at the Rewild Group, you guys are focused on helping develop business leaders, and you kind of advise companies on how to become exceptional businesses. Is that correct?
yeah.
Well, there's a lot of small businesses that are out there that are either founder led or maybe they're owner operated, and they don't have, I guess, quote unquote, managers because the
Yeah.
founders or the owners are operating those business. But when does it make, do you think, to maybe have a management team and kind of break
Mm.
away from the leader or the owner managing the business? At what point do you think organizations need to look at shifting their business model?
Yeah, that's a perfect question, actually. The foundation of how we help businesses is over 3 decades of research on small and mid-sized businesses that have uncovered 7 specific stages of growth that businesses go through. So when I answer this question, it really isn't based on my own perspective or own thoughts, but really based on research that I've studied and then have seen as reality in small businesses. There's this shift that happens between stage 2, which goes up to 19 employees, and stage 3, which starts at 20 employees and goes up to around 34 employees.
Mhm.
And it's where we need to really see a business go from owner centric, where the business revolves around the owner, to enterprise centric, where the business really has almost an entity of its own. And the
Mhm.
only way to do that is through delegation, through delegating to that management team. So, really, around that 20-person mark, there needs to be, I mean, before that, you need to have supervisors. You absolutely should be having supervisors. Um, so it's not this shift that happens overnight, but really at that stage 3, it's really a focus on delegation, developing your managers, so that, as the organization grows into that next stage, it
Mhm.
is it's supported by a strong management team. Because a CEO, even the best CEO, even the most energized CEO, the most talented, whatever it is, there is just a limit to what one person can do um, in managing an organization.
I in my work that I do, I help a lot of founder-led companies as well, and it's very hard for them to kind of give up control because it's something
Mm.
that, they take pride in the company that they're growing, and they don't know when it's time to kind of break away and ask for help. Do you ever find that in with companies that you're supporting as well?
100%. I'll sometimes say that critiquing or giving advice on someone's business is worse than giving advice on their children. Like,
Right.
it's definitely in the same ballpark.
Yeah, they definitely take it personally, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, but so what is the difference between management and leadership?
Yeah, it's such a good and big question.
Right.
So I'll share maybe a couple tidbits that resonate with me. Um, to me, management is really, it's a responsibility. When you're managing something, whether it's a project or people or a team, it really is almost a work focused. responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, leadership is much more of a people focused responsibility, and it's not necessarily one that's detailed on your your responsibilities list. I think leadership can be displayed at every level in an organization, but with the owners and the founders that we tend to work with, I think the way that these things show up is really management is this very work centric, project centric, deadline centric um, responsibility, and leadership is something else. Leadership
Mm-hmm.
is how you can engage with your staff, and how you can engage with your market and your clients. How do you get people to want to follow you?
Right.
um, yeah.
Well, why do you feel then it's important to have a strong management team?
It's critical to keep the work of the business going. And it really is at that certain point in a business's stage of growth. It's not going to make sense for a 5-person organization to necessarily put a huge emphasis on having a formalized management team.
Right.
But when an organization gets to a certain level, in order to effectively deliver the good or service that the business is providing to the market,
Mm-hmm.
it's not possible to do that with just the CEO. So a strong management team is going to do a lot of things. It is going to be the front line of overseeing and mentoring and guiding the entire staff. A lot of times I think about, graphic, a triangle or a pyramid. And
Mm-hmm.
at the top, you've got your executives. And that's a small percentage of your business when you look at the number of people in the organization. It's also a small percentage of the work that actually gets done, because they're just a small percentage of the number of people in the organization. And then at the bottom, you've got your staff, and they're doing the work that's probably maybe 80% of your organization. And the management team is that middle layer. And they are responsible for overseeing and mentoring and engaging with furthering, achieving deadlines, the work side of things, but also the culture, and taking the vision from the executive down to the majority of your organization. So it's just this critical layer that a lot of times is unfortunately overlooked.
Just Get Hired is sponsored by Anchor. And if you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and there's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from the palm of your hand. All you need is a phone or computer. They'll distribute your podcast for you, so you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so much more. You can also make money from your podcast. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So make sure that you download your free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now, a lot of people, I feel, they get, they're in that state, in that middle stage, if you look at the triangle, and then they kind of get
Yeah.
thrown into a management role, and they're not really equipped to manage, or really have never had to manage others. So how would
Yes.
you coach them, or maybe the organization, to work through that lack of skill set?
Yeah, it happens all the time. I wish that wasn't the case, but a lot of times and I'm sure you see this in your work, the best doer of things is promoted to managing all of the doers, and they're great at whatever it is, they're great as a plumber because that's
Right.
what the work is, but they have no management skills and they have no management training.
Mhm.
There's a statistic, something like, and I was just reading this, we just posted it on our LinkedIn page. It's something like, on average, our managers are getting their first management role, taking on their first management role at the age of 27, and receiving their first management training at 43.
Wow.
It's over a decade. Um, the reality is that there has to be some level of guidance, of mentorship, of training, to really expect that individual or those group of individuals are going to be successful as managers. And kind of the starting point that I'll usually talk to a business about is, they need to understand that management, a successful management team or a successful manager is going to manage four areas. They're going to manage themselves as an individual, they have to manage their staff, they have to manage the work being done, and they have to manage the workplace. And naturally, as individuals, we're going to have strengths and weaknesses in those areas. So some of us
Mhm.
are going to be great at managing ourselves, but really struggle managing people.
Mhm.
And so it's about understanding not only that that manager needs to be equipped in all of those areas, but also understanding how does that individual, what areas are they strong in, and what areas are they going to need more guidance, more training, more coaching in.
That's a great statistic about managers starting around 27. I was fortunate to be in a management. So I was taught the
Mm,
leadership and the management and how to run a business. But I think sometimes companies just assume that their best employee wants to be in a position of authority or they want to be in a position of management. So they kind of stick them in that role and then, assume that because they're a good employee that they know how to give direction, they know how to
mhm.
um, share ideas. Sometimes those types of people kind of want to be in the background, but they aren't um, ready to say so,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, when we throw people into positions and they're not quite ready, management starts to suck, employee culture suffers,
Yes.
retention suffers, and then you get a bad reputation. You go from being a great employee to this horrible manager, and
Mm.
that is never a good thing. But when management sucks, retention is suffering. Is there anything else that you would say bad management leads to?
I mean, eh, managers are the number one influencer of employee engagement, of employee retention. I mean, everything, right?
Mhm.
When thinking back to that graphic, like the pyramid or the triangle, it's like your managers are the ones that are talking to, interacting with, touching, responsible for your face and managing the experience. We think a lot about customer experience, right? But your managers are they are really the employee experience for
Mhm.
your staff. And so it's hard to think about anything that a bad manager doesn't impact from an employee's perspective.
Right. Well, as they say, people leave managers, not companies.
100%. 100%.
I think that's also like the number one reason why people are doing this quote unquote quiet quitting.
Mhm.
It's just because, they also see their managers are not doing probably what they should be doing. So they're like, why should I work harder than my manager? So, you get this whole quiet quitting vibe, and that's been a trendy name going around the internet right now. But um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
do you have
I think that's so true.
yes. Well, do you have any advice for employees who are working for poor managers?
Oh, I think poor managers can be a big bucket, and I think that there are definitely situations where, you know, this advice is not applicable.
Hmm.
But one of the things, one of the concepts that was shared to me years ago, and that I try and use is the idea of managing a manager. In that, if you're in a position where your manager isn't giving you what you need, look for ways to see if you can try and um, encourage what you need out of your manager.
Hmm.
So helpful reminders or just asking, it's been simple. I've used simple things like um, a little bit of an update of here's where I'm at on these things, and this is what I'm waiting for. Let me know if there's anything else that I can do to keep this moving along. So understanding that might be a way for you to get what you need to be successful. And although I haven't had experiences with really bad managers, I have definitely heard of situations where, you know, that advice probably doesn't make any sense. It may just not be the right place for you as well.
I've had to actually
kind of do that where you set the level of expectations for your manager and what you're kind of looking for. Like, I like to have feedback. I need to be
Mhm.
told, like, hey, is this kind of what you're wanting to see versus like, just wondering if I am doing the right thing. So I've had to ask, hey, can we have a follow up? Or, hey, can we touch base once a week? Just so I kind of
Yeah.
understand, like, am I on the right path? Am I doing what you want from me? So kind of training them, and then they kind of understand, oh, okay, this is probably important. And so then they
Yeah.
set up the expectations for, my other coworkers who are, also kind of wondering the same thing. Because if I'm wondering that, I'm sure my coworkers are doing the same thing. So really imperative to kind of stay on top of your managers sometimes because, they're learning as they go, just like you are.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a good reminder. Like you said, I mean, unfortunately, it's not uncommon for people to be put into management positions that are not equipped, that don't have a desire, that are struggling or learning as they go as well. So, um, yeah, if you can give guidance to your manager about how you best work, oftentimes that even if your manager's not asking, and they should be, but
Mhm.
it's valuable information. Just like almost any other professional relationship, really understanding how to effectively communicate, how to effectively work together. All of those things apply in a manager supervisee relationship.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of the things that's happening over at the Rewild Group? How are you developing teams and managers and helping organizations?
Yeah, so we work through really we help businesses through three different methods. The first is self-guided, and when I think back to my story with the methodology, that's where we started. We read a book and we gathered around the conference room table and we started unpacking and applying the ideas. So self-guided, that's going to be our book resources, our free downloads, our free workshops, just trying to little snippets of ideas and concepts to help business leaders and managers in their organizations really focus on that small to mid-sized business. And then for companies who want more assistance or more guidance, we also have a coach supported program. These
Mhm.
are certified coaches from around the globe that can help in a coaching engagement, or advisors who can help really more in a consultative nature, um, and actually work through more hands-on and focused on specific areas of the business. We don't subscribe to this is our system, put your entire business into it and change how you do everything. Our methodology is always look at the business, look what's keeping it from being where it could be, and work there. No sense in recreating the wheel for things that are working. No sense in trying to fix things that are not broken. So that's kind of a shared mentality. We really want to help a business leader identify what's keeping them from getting where they want to go, and how do we focus energy and resources there and apply some research-based methodology to help move the needle.
Perfect. Well, I will make sure that I put links to the Rewild Group, and then is LinkedIn also a good way to get in contact with you?
Yes, that is probably the best way.
Okay, perfect. Well, Madeline, I really appreciate your perspective on why strong management teams matter, and thank you so much for being a part of the Just Get Hired podcast.
I want to thank the Rewild Group for letting me borrow Madelyn for our interview. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Well, have you heard of the ostrich effect? Well, in business, it's when people stick their head in the sand rather than facing unpleasant or negative information. And kind of like an ostrich, if they don't see the danger or what's happening in front of them, then maybe it'll go away. Well, in essence, it's ignoring your problems instead of acknowledging them. And this is why strong management teams matter. It's why investing in your team and your talent matters. So for the last few years, we have been throwing money at a lot of retention programs to get our employees to stay. Think about the companies who have upped their benefits. They've provided better working conditions, different hours, more remote work, better pay. But we fail to look at the leaders at the top and how they are managing their workforce and giving them the tools and the training that they need so that they can excel. Managers drive engagement. Strong managers will turn good profits. So why? They're responsible for productivity, everyone's well-being. They develop people that are running the organization. So strong managers manage the team. They provide supervision, they coach, they mentor, they provide structure. Strong managers aren't afraid to do the work. They understand and develop the process. They solve problems, they listen to the issues, they find solutions. Strong managers know how to manage themselves. They look at and lean on their leadership traits like having a vision, creating value, inspiring others, putting people first, and being proactive. Strong managers, well, they simply know how to manage. They know how to run meetings, they settle conflicts, they put teams together, and they know how to motivate everyone to accomplish a goal. Well, do you guys know a strong manager? Do you even work for one? Maybe you work for an organization that you consider to have strong management and leadership. Well, I want to hear from you, so let's continue this conversation. Find me on LinkedIn. Again, search by my full name, Jessica Fiesta George. Email me at justgethired@gmail.com. Interact with me on my website, justgethired.com, because I really would love to hear your thoughts. If you know a strong manager or if you're working for a great organization, I would love to feature them on a future episode on this podcast. Well, if you like this show, I rely on your 5-star reviews on iTunes and your positive comments. So if you don't mind, after you listen to this episode, head on over to iTunes and leave me a positive review. I really appreciate it. I'm also giving away podcast stickers so you can show your support for this show. You can message me on social media. I'll send you one, and you can show your Just Get Hired podcast love. Well, come on back, because in 2 weeks, I'm going to have another great guest. My name is Jessica Fiesta George, your host of the Just Get Hired podcast. What do y'all want to talk about next? I'll catch you on my next episode.